Hi guys, Ali Taylor down at Heron's Reach, and today we're going to be having a look at some new irons from Mizuno. Now they are new, but they're just an updated version. So we're going to look today at the Jpx 921 range. So in the range we've got the Tour, we've got the Forged, we've got the Hot Metal Pro, and the Hot Metal. So like I said, I mean, they are new irons, but for me, they're just an upgrade from the 919. So there's not a massive amount of difference in kind of the designs. But what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna hit each iron in 7-iron, Titleist Pro V1X on Trackman. We're gonna talk about kind of some of the numbers the 7-iron gives, and maybe talk a little bit about maybe the player that it's aimed at, because I think they're aimed maybe not at 4 completely different players, but from the Tour iron, which is much more of a good ball striker, maybe somebody who's not looking for out and out distance with the lofts. The lofts get stronger as you go into the hot metals, and they become more and more forgiving. So I think the irons really cater for everyone, but I'm going to try and give you a bit of feedback on kind of looks, feel, performance, and therefore if you're in the market for a new set of irons, which of these you possibly should be trying. Right then, so slightly different camera angle today. We've got a beautiful rainy day down in Blackpool. No one would guess it's the middle of summer, but it's still the perfect time for me to try these new irons. Now, obviously from my perspective, I'm actually currently, potentially, in the market for a new set of irons. So there's a bit of selfishness here that I kind of want to see which ones of these might suit me. But we're going to start off with the Jpx 921 Tour. And when you look at the club from behind, it is a gorgeous looking iron. You know, there's a very tiny little cavity in there. Mizuno saying that a little bit of a change in material in the back should just change the acoustics, so therefore the feel of the golf club. But you know, this really, when you look from the back, looks like a club for a guy who's going to be a decent ball striker and isn't looking for a huge amount of forgiveness, but maybe just a little bit. When you look at the sole of the club, I always love this with the Mizuno irons. It's a little bit rounded, so there's a little bit of bounce in there, but that's really to kind of aid with turf interaction, so get the club working through the turf a little bit better. And when you put it down behind the golf ball, I think it's a good looking club. I think if I'm being really picky, I think the top line is a little thicker than I would like it to be. But I don't think that's a massive issue, because I think the guy who's going for this iron is maybe looking for that just a touch more forgiveness, and therefore won't mind that slight sacrifice of look. So 34 degree. And I love the fact that the fitting irons actually have the loft on the bottom, so there's no confusion there. 34 degrees, so it kind of stacks up with kind of some of the blades for loft and things that are on the market. But let's hit some shots, let's look at some numbers, and get an initial thought on the Tour iron. So reasonable start, maybe just a little bit heavy with that one. That felt better. And as you'd expect, a nice high flight. Everything pretty good. 7,000 spins, so kind of very much what I'd be looking for with a 7-iron of this loft. So definitely that first one was a little bit of ground first. And again, another solid one. So again, that ball speed fairly consistent. Probably just launching marginally higher than I would normally expect to see, but that's just, I think, the loft on the iron. Now, the burning question that I always get asked, the whole phrase of nothing feels like a Mizuno. You know, what does that feel like after those first few shots? I think it feels soft, but you'd expect that with forged product, wouldn't you? Would I say it felt as good as I thought it would? I don't know, maybe not, but maybe with me, that saying of nothing feels like a Mizuno, I always have this opinion of it feeling ultra soft. I really like the feel, like I said, the look, maybe 8 out of 10 for me, but last couple with the tour iron. Okay, so that one, just a little bit toey, and we can see that ball speed drops down. Carry at 152, but still decent spin for one that was a bit toey. Now that was flushed. So good strike, fairly typical club speed for me. Spin a bit lower than I expected, so that one kind of getting out a little bit. So if we look at the strikes there, a little bit kind of centre of the club face, but a little bit erratic with the ball striking, and we could see there a big difference in kind of the really good one that maybe didn't spin enough for the last one, and that first one that was maybe a touch heavy. Now, as a result of that, if we say 155 as the average, I think we'd want it to be a little bit longer than that. So if we actually looked at taking that first one out, so 158 carry, 115 ball speed, 6.2 spin, kind of where I would expect that to be, and how optimum is that for me? Yeah, it's saying I'm back a little bit on ball speed, which again comes down to that little bit of ball striking. Maybe my delivery of the club a little bit on the shallow side, but all in all, pretty solid. Right, so we move from the tour into the forged head, and when you look at the back of this one, very, very different looking. You know, you can see noticeably more mass, certainly down at the bottom. 31 degrees, so 3 degrees stronger, so certainly by moving that CG lower in the head, Mizuno presumably looking to keep that launch angle good but get some more ball speed. Not bad. If we look at the sole of the club, you can see definitely a little bit more width in there, and certainly as you put it down behind the golf ball, it's definitely noticeably bigger, thicker top line, and I still think it's a good looking club, not in my opinion anywhere near the tour, but certainly this kind of makes me think it's like a tour version that's just the guy that wants a bit more distance and wants a bit more performance. So what do we have there? So I'm gonna, again, I've got the same shaft, so I'm gonna keep it as similar as possible for these. Let's hit 5 shots with the forged, and let's see how the performance is maybe different to the tour. So still feels very, very soft. You know, just feels very like the tour, I think, off the face. So that was a good strike. Ball speed was up, which I'd expect with less loft. Spin was down, which again I'd expect with a little bit less loft. So 3 degrees is quite a big change, I think. But it still gets the ball up in the air as a good height. So we saw even more ball speed there, even though that strike was a tiny bit towards the toe. So good start. Yeah, definitely more consistent with the shot for me. See that ball speed again, over 120, which is solid for me. Again, that spin just dropping down, and that's my only worry when these clubs start getting a little bit kind of stronger in loft. For me, it's not necessarily an issue because I still hit the ball quite high, so I can stop the ball with height, but I think for a lot of golfers that don't hit the ball high, the stronger loft, yes, is more speed, so there's more distance, but it's maybe a negative because they don't get the height and they don't get the spin to get the ball to stop on the green. Now, having said that, today in Blackpool, that wouldn't be an issue at all because it's that soft out there, anything will stop. Oh, it does feel good though. It does feel good and it's powerful. It's a 124 ball speed, 180. So it's really getting out there. Really, really getting out there. Okay, one last one. Oh yes. I do like that. I do like that. So again, My club speed's very consistent. Our spin's definitely lower. But let's just look at the averages there. So we can see better ball striking for me, which is always going to happen swing to swing. There's going to be that little bit of movement in strike. But we look at an average carry of 175, ball speed at 122. So the ball was launching lower, quicker, less speed, which we'd expect from a club with less loft. And when we look at what I should potentially be doing for my speed, you know, it's saying 164. I know it's not 35.5 there, so you know, it's definitely going further, it's spinning less, lots and lots of ball speed, so just a very powerful, forgiving iron. So I always talk about maybe the perfect set of irons for me would be something that looks good, feels good, and performs great. Now for me personally, I don't necessarily think price always comes into it, only because I think if you get a set of irons that tick the other three boxes, I think they are something that would stay in your bag for a good length of time. And therefore, whatever the price, you will get good value. So certainly for me, out of those first two, even though I prefer the look of the Tour, definitely get more consistent performance out of the Forged. But that moves into the Hot Metal Pro. So when you look at the back, I mean, for me, it's not massively different looking to the Forged. Now, not a completely forged head now, so a slight change in manufacturing process. 29 degree 7N, but we can definitely see, you know, a little bit more mass down at the bottom of the club head. So still expecting this to get the ball up in the air and a good height. And as you put it down behind the golf ball though, I think it is noticeably different. Much thicker top line, definitely looks a stronger loft. For me, it's starting to look more like a 6-iron, which I think at that loft, that would be the case. But let's get on hitting some shots and see how Hot Metal Pro performs. Oh, that feels quick. So there's definitely a different feel. So definitely not quite as soft. Now that wasn't a great strike, and yet I've still got 124 mile an hour ball speed and still pitch that 182. That one felt better, but it does feel like a rocket. So 126, so launching lower, again, as I'd expect. And again, you know, I think if you're somebody, even off those first two shots, if you're somebody who, I don't know, maybe even just likes the idea that it says Pro on the back rather than the normal Hot Metal, it'll be interesting to see how the normal Hot Metal performs. But for me, that's very quick off the face, hits it a long, long way. So not maybe for somebody like myself who's got some reasonable club head speed, but definitely hits it a long way. Now that was a little bit thin, just a tiny bit, but still very good ball speed, and still very decent carry. So for me, you know, it's not always about, well, it's not at all about hitting it perfectly out the middle every time, because there's no golfer in the world does that. Now, I know obviously sometimes guys will say, yeah, but you need to hit it out the exact same place every time to be fair comparison. I get that, but you know, there's got to be a tolerance in strikes, and it's definitely where already you can see the more forgiving the club, you know, definitely the more consistent my distance is. Oh, now that was toey. That was toey. So some decent ball speed still. Still very good carry, but getting out there because that backspin's very, very low for a 7-iron. And that felt solid. Yeah, still a bit toey. And again, you know, long. So, I mean, for me personally, I sound silly, but I don't necessarily want to be hitting 7-iron that far, only because I think as I get down to wedge, it's going a long way, and then I'm just having to put more wedges in my bag, but let's look at the averages for Hot Metal Pro. So we can definitely see there, not great strikes, and I definitely find that with the more forgiving clubs, I just struggle to be as consistently out in the middle. I don't know why, it's something I've always done, but you can see there's not a massive drop off up the left between kind of the good strike and the slight miss hits. Again, we look at performance there, really quick ball speed, obviously launching lower, spinning lower, but for me, still getting to that peak height overall, so it would give me the chance to stop the ball. Right, so that moves me on to the final model, the Hot Metal. So in the Hot Metal Pro, it was long, it was forgiving. When we look at the back of the Hot Metal, you know, you can see there's even more mass down there at the bottom. I think the really nice thing with this though is they're staying at 29 degrees of loft. So I can well imagine maybe golfers blending sets between Hot Metal and Hot Metal Pro. Look at the sole, you know, it's a big wide sole, but again I like the fact that it's slightly rounded, so there might be slightly better turf interaction. But when you do put this down behind the golf ball, you know, I think it looks big and chunky. Potentially, I think for the ball striker, for the golfer whose ball striking isn't great, I think they'll really like that big chunky head, and it'll inspire a bit of confidence. But for me, maybe not ticking the box on looks. And I think as we've moved from Hot Metal down, I think certainly the looks perspective for me has become less good. Right, so 5 shots. I'm expecting this to feel very, very like the Pro. Certainly seems to get up in the air a little bit more. Even though it's the same loft, that lower mass, certainly getting the ball up in the air a bit. That was good, yeah, kind of what we'd expect with that loft. Ooh, that's that toey one again. So it'll be interesting to see. I mean, that was very, very poor. Ball speed decent, but still long, really long for something that far out the toe. So there you go, that's that one. Like I was just saying, if the ball striking's not quite there, a lot of forgiveness with the Hot Metal. Definitely for me looks higher than the Pro. And certainly that CG being lower in the head. Try to get as much spin and height out of that as possible for something with 29 degrees. But last couple. Yeah, I think this will be a very, very popular model. Having said that, the 919 Hot Metal was hugely popular when I was fitting, and I think this will just be a continuation with that popularity. Don't necessarily think we'll see too many guys changing from 919 range into 921. I actually did a fitting last night with one of my members at Heron's Reach, and he's actually changed from the 917 forge to the 921. The performance wasn't massively different, but he loved the look, loved the feel, and he felt after that kind of period of time, it was time for a change for him. But one final one, 921 Hot Metal. Yeah, I mean, they really do send it. So again, great ball speed, good distance. That one even spun a little bit more, so it's trying really hard to be that perfect iron. So let's look at the averages for Hot Metal, and then let's just compare the shots. A little bit on dispersion, which I know is mainly down to me for accuracy, but then front to back, and let's see, as we went potentially more forgiving, did my grouping become more accurate? So average strikes out the toe again. So you see that, I mean, even though with the Tour I wasn't great, the Forge, my ball striking was good, but as I moved into the more forgiving ones, definitely tend to be more towards the toe. But, you know, club head speed's about the same. You know, really good carry, good ball speed, and just generally very, very solid. So when we look there at dispersion, so actually the Tour was very accurate, you know, not super long. Now there is the one that hit heavy I took out of there, so but that's definitely me. None of the others I hit the ground first. But when we look at accuracy wise, the consistency definitely got better going kind of forged, HM Pro and HM. And definitely that would show me that as the models say they're more forgiving, that's definitely the case. Definitely see a huge difference in distance down to the lofts, therefore the ball speed created. And you can see those some very, very strong performance from forged, Hot Metal Pro and Hot Metal. Right then guys, so what did I think about the 921 range? I think it's good, you know, nothing that I didn't expect. I thought it was very, very similar to 919. Certainly for me, if you're a golfer that's got good club head speed, good ball striker that, you know, isn't bothered about distance, wants that bit more playability, the Torg offers that little bit of forgiveness. Then as you go to forged, you certainly maintain that feel. You lose a little bit on looks, but you definitely get a bit more on performance, stronger distance because of the loft, and a little bit more forgiveness with the design. For me, when you go into the Hot Metal and the Hot Metal Pro, both incredibly similar. I think for the guy who already hits it quite high, even though the lofts are the same, I think the Pro will lend itself a little bit more just because there's not as much mass low down in the head. But I think, you know, 4 really good sets of irons, definitely an offer in there for everybody. And if you are in the market, you should get along. And if Mizuno is something you can try, you should definitely be giving it a go. Because I've had a lot of golfers over the last couple of years that have ended up playing Mizuno irons that potentially thought they weren't good enough. And I think manufacturers are definitely getting away from targeting one specific area. You know, most manufacturers have got a lot of different irons out now, so it's find what works best for you, get that in the bag and start enjoying your golf. So guys, hope you've enjoyed today's video. If you have, like it and share it, comment below and I'll get back to as many people as I can. If you've enjoyed today's content and you don't currently subscribe, please consider clicking the button below, ring that notification bell, and then you'll find out whenever I drop a new video. Follow me on all my social media platforms, all under Ali Taylor Golf. Hopefully catch up with some of you guys down here soon. Stay in contact.